Some photographers are angry, some photographers are gay. I'm the philosopher-photographer. I walk, I talk, I philosophize, I photographize. We're going to do a shootout between the Nikon AIS 50mm f1.8 versus an Auto Takumar f1.8 55mm. The Takumar is a M42 screw mount, and it has a big dent in the filter ring. So let's check them out and see what they're all about. Of course, this is my usual place is Morristown, New Jersey. It's a quaint, interesting town. It's not big like New York City, and it's not funky like Patterson, and it's a pretty cool place for photo ops. You can see here there's a little arrow pointing to the dent, and how this lens got dented was someone gave me an old Pentax H3 with this lens on it, and it must have got dropped because the H3 wouldn't work. The shutter would always hang up after about 3 exposures. So I tossed the camera, kept this lens. I must have it 30 years now, and except for the dent, it's in very clean condition. Now, as usual, in the upper left-hand corner, if you see an N, that means the Nikon, and if you see a ST, that means the Takumar. I thought it was a Super Takumar, but actually it's an Auto Takumar, but that's just the way it goes. Now, the only difference I'm seeing is the 10% difference in focal length. One is 50mm, one is 55mm. So the 55 is going to give you a little bit bigger image scale and slightly less field of view. As you can see, I really nailed the exposures on these for most of these. So there's no major big difference. I don't see any flaring. I don't see any ghosting. I don't see any distortion. I don't see any major color shifts. So I use twin Sony A5000s, and as usual, I set the parameters to -2 on contrast. I think I had the saturation at -1, and the sharpness was at 3. So here's a perfect example right here. Here's the Nikon shooting down this pathway, and here's the Takumar, and they're virtually identical except for the change in image scale. Now, the Nikon I bought, well, from KEH, and it was in excellent condition, and I paid big bucks for it. It's $150. And now KEH is selling lenses in just good condition for $150. In fact, I don't even see them in excellent condition anymore. Now, the world is awash in Auto Takumars in various conditions. Now, mine would be a bargain if, say, this KEH place sold it. It would be a bargain because it has a big dent in it. Optically, it's perfect. There's no haze in it. It's not scratched up. The enamel is otherwise good condition, and it's perfectly operating condition. But because it has a big giant dent in it, it would have to be a bargain. But is it really a bargain lens? And it seems to be holding its own against the Nikon. Now, Nikon was always like a primo company, and Takumars and Pentaxes, they were like, the budget end of the spectrum. I don't know how they got that reputation, but they did. But I could tell you that the most vintage Takumars and Pentax lenses, they're up there. They were the big three, which is Canon, Nikon, and Pentax. And if you think about it, these companies were making near-perfect optics. And if you make near-perfect optics and they have the same general formulation, which is a Gauss, 6 or 7 element Gauss, and they're perfect, well, you expect them to perform very nearly the same, and they do. So some people are Nikon people, some are Canon people, some are Pentax people. But these tests that I've been doing surprised me in as much as in real world results, I don't see much difference in any of these lenses. So what I would do is I would buy the best condition one you could get. You know, if you have a choice between a crappy, well, say a crappy Nikon and a really good condition Pentax, I would buy the Pentax. And conversely, if you have a choice between a crappy Pentax and a really good Nikon, I would go for a Nikon. I just don't see any much change in contrast. I don't see much difference in color. They're virtually identical. And brick walls really should, you know, they force, you know, distortion. And, you know, you would see, is it barrel pincushion? I don't see it. These are totally rectilinear lenses. And their color balance is almost exactly the same. And look at, you can see in the detail, the fine detail, their high definition. They got excellent resolution. Here's Bella Oxmix and Peaches. Somebody is putting scarves and hats on the statues in town, and with a little note saying whoever needs a scarf or hat could take them. Which I don't know. I guess they're afraid of walking up to homeless people. I'm afraid of walking up to homeless people. You know, never know what sort of drugs they're whacked out on or whatever, and they might stab you. So maybe that's best to do. Now this is like where the green is, and there's like stores all around the green, but the homeless shelter is just like you know, 2 blocks over. Of course, now it's cold out. I took these pictures in November. You don't see anyone rough sleeping in the park because it's too cold for that. So they got this big building. This building was put up in 1949 according to the cornerstone, and they have these trees in front of it, and they cast shadows on the wall, and it's always something interesting. Now there's a little bit of difference here between a Nikon and a Takumar, but that could have been my exposure. Maybe I was off by 1 shutter speed. Let's see, I was using 400 mostly. I set the lens to f4, and I just varied the shutter speed. And you say, well, photographer, or PP for short, why do you choose f4? Well, these fast lenses of like f1.8, f1.9, f2, if you go down 2 stops, that's when you're going to get your best image quality. Oh, sure, you can stop down more, and it might improve contrast a little bit, and you'll get more depth of field. But the smaller you set your aperture, the more diffraction effects you're going to get. So whatever major aberrations you have wide open, stopping down 2 f-stops usually gets rid of them. So I figured I'd just do that just to eliminate diffraction of a small apertures like f8, f11, f16. On optical benches, you always read that. You know, after f8 there is no improvement, and in fact it got worse through diffraction. So f4, you know, I just wanted to see how well it controls flare. I mean, I don't see no flare. I don't see any blooming. The contrast is excellent in both these lenses at f4, and you know, it's strictly the shutter speed I was changing. These 2 pictures were, I think I had a portrait orientation, and when I did the 60:9 full frame crop, of course the crop was horizontal, and I got more of a image scale from that. This statue is so realistic. It's amazing. I mean, it's just the technology that went into skill and craftsmanship is amazing. And this isn't the only statue. They have other statues around. They have one of George Washington, Lafayette, and some other patriot of the day. Here's another full-frame crop, a horizontal crop of a vertical orientation, just to bring out some more detail. And they're virtually identical. It's amazing. I mean, look at this, his handkerchief in his pocket, and the buttons, and his hand. There's all these standpipes all over the center of town, and some are old, some are new, some have different valve arrangements. This is just one I happen to like. It looked like a newer one. I don't really know how old it is. This is on the building from 1949, but it could have been upgraded. For some reason, they have these carriage lights all around the buildings that flank the green. I think they're pretty cool looking. It's sort of like a Frankenstein castle sort of a look to it or something, or some sort of Art Deco. And then you have these old buildings all over. They have the new and the old. They have new tall skyscrapers, and they got these rinky-dink buildings, who knows, from the early 20th century. Signs, they got signs everywhere. All the roads go around the green, and it's called Park Avenue, west, east, north, south. This is Madison Avenue. Madison Avenue goes into the green just like Morris Avenue does. And these are all early morning pictures. So the sun is coming from the left, and it's reflecting off these buildings with specular highlights. And you think, well, this is a flary condition, and both these lenses handle it extremely well. The Grand Cafe is probably an expensive looking eatery. I've never been in it, though I walked by it lots of times. But then I'm never there when it's open. I don't know what their COVID policy is anyway. No, all eateries should have a section like you have a non-smoking and smoking section. They should have a vaccinated and an unvaccinated section. What's the conclusion? The conclusion is no difference that I could tell at all. All those vintage lenses are almost identical. This is the town hall, the main court, and I like the statue of Justice, and they have a gold dome. And look at the fine, funky, fancy weather vane they have up there. It's some sort of like a plow. And of course, if you look real close at the details here, everything looks a little shabby there, like it needs a scraping and a paint job. This is Fort Nonsense, which is a tiny little park, and you got to walk up a little bit of a steep hill. It's the highest point around in Morristown proper, and they have a view to the east, and they used to use bonfires. They built big bonfires for signals in the Revolutionary War days. And the leaves were changing, and a lot of them had fallen. And I really don't see much difference. And you think you say, oh, I see some color change, or one was bluer, one was warmer. No, I don't see that. They have one Canon there. I think the Canon is authentic, but they reconstructed the case on, or the cart that it's on. They have to chain it down because I guess people go up there and steal it. That's the sort of world we live in. It's a very small park. I mean, from the road to walk up to the top takes like 10 minutes. Then you take a look at the view east and you walk down, and that takes like 10 minutes, and that's it. And of course, adjacent to it are all houses. There's a slight wilderness area going maybe to the south if you want to bushwhack a little bit. But it's not like a big giant park. I mean, if you look closely at this steeplechase here, it's a little in need of a paint job, and they all have the plow weather vane on top. So the only difference I'm seeing myself is that the Nikon is 50 millimeters and the auto Takumar is 55 millimeters. Otherwise, they're virtually identical. So if you have like a mirrorless camera and you want to get into vintage lenses, don't think, oh, Canon is better or Nikon is better or Takumars are better. They're pretty much exactly the same.